Hello, my name is Tim Weaver, and I am the president of HAL5, the Huntsville, Alabama L5 Society. HAL5 is a chapter of the National Space Society. HAL5 was founded in 1983 as a chapter of the former L5 Society, which was founded in 1975 by Carol Millen and Keith Henson to promote the ideas of humanity living completely off-world as envisioned by Gerald K. O'Neill. The HAL5 guest speaker for this month is Dr. Michelle Wooten, Assistant Professor of Astronomy Education and the International Dark Sky Association Delegate, an organization working towards educating the public on issues of light pollution and taking steps to mitigate its effects on the night sky.
Alrighty, so I will go ahead and share my screen. I am sharing with you today a presentation called Preserving Alabama's Starry Skies. And I'm going to share with you at first a bit of an outline. So I have a few goals for you. First, I want to share about why dark and starry skies matter to me. And then I'm going to define light pollution and several terms that are included in the vernacular of light pollution that will help you and I more easily talk about light pollution together among one another and with the general public. Third, we're going to explore negative environmental effects of light pollution, some of which you may have witnessed in Huntsville or when you've traveled maybe to the beach in the summer. Next, I'll provide guidelines for home and community lighting. What can you do around your home, or what can cities do to make lighting better and help improve dark skies? Finally, I'll invite you to advocate for dark skies, and I have some exciting news to share on that front. During this presentation, I will be asking you to respond to questions that I pose in the Zoom chat. This is to make this presentation a little more dialogical and interactive. If you don't feel comfortable sharing, that's okay, but I'd love to hear your thoughts in the chat. Since it's a small group tonight, I will also invite people to unmute themselves and share their ideas that way. But I will also share links to resourceful articles and videos in the chat as well. Okay, so why do dark skies matter to me? Just gonna make sure that this is moved off. Okay, so I didn't grow up in Alabama, but Alabama is where I want to be. I love it. I love being back in this state. I earned my doctorate at the University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa. And as Tim suggested, I'm now at the University of Alabama, Birmingham. But where I grew up in California, my night sky looked something like what is on the left here. There was only a few stars visible every night amongst a very bright orange sky. And yet somehow, when I was in my early teens, I absolutely fell in love with the study of the stars. I wanted to know more about them. And in order to get to see a dark, starry sky, my parents had to drive me maybe once every 6 months to the desert to learn about the constellations using a star map. And thankfully, I found a group of amateur astronomers that were local to my area that could help me learn how to use a telescope. Because of the way that they extended their reach to me, I wanted to extend my understanding of astronomy and how to preserve dark skies to other people. And so I've been on a long journey since that early teen time to help people understand how they can see better dark night skies and appreciate all the wonders of the universe, starting with looking through a telescope. I want to say that my fascination with looking at the night sky is something that has inspired humans for centuries. And we are slowly and yet exponentially reducing our view of the night sky. So one thing I wanted to ask you is, firstly, have you ever seen a dark sky? And if you have, where have you seen one outside of Alabama? Let's start with outside of Alabama first. You can either type your where you saw a dark sky in the chat on Zoom, or you could unmute yourself and share aloud. Where have you seen a dark sky with a lot of stars? Go ahead, Ronnie.
I know where I wanted to see it, but first, probably the darkest I've ever seen is up in Maine visiting my sister, but there's still a lot of trees around. And
Yes.
In 2005, I went on a cruise, and I was so looking forward to being out at night in the middle of, well, not quite the middle of the ocean, but well away from cities, and finally seeing a real dark sky with no obstructions. And there were more city lights on that darn cruise ship than downtown New York. I was so mad.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I know what you mean. I went on a cruise when it was 2001 with my family, and I was lucky enough that the cruise did shut off their lights, and so I saw a miraculous Milky Way view on that.
Oh,
cruise.
wow.
Yeah, I lucked out. Thank you for sharing that, Ronnie. So in the country near Knoxville, Tennessee, says Robin in the chat, and David Newsom says, or that would be Tim Weaver, excuse me. The closest was his home in rural Alabama, where they grew up. And I appreciate you sharing that. I actually had students this semester in my astronomy classes, because I only teach astronomy at Alabama, who described to me that after taking my course and learning about light pollution, they were moving away from the city because they also had grown up in rural Alabama and realized that with all the lights, they didn't identify with the city. And so I don't know if that's good for UAB enrollment. It sounds like people might leave because of me, but yeah, the people really find that love of the stars out in the rural areas of Alabama. So my next question to you was, where within Alabama have you seen a dark sky with a lot of stars? And there are some places, in fact, if you search hard for them. So I just wonder if anyone has seen or can share with others a good place to go see a dark sky in Alabama.
Well, DBAS, the Von Braun Astronomical Society, we have like a place. It's in Kenema, I believe it's called. It's right in front of I hate to say it's right in front of a cemetery, but it's a Bortle 4 site, and we rent out like a spot right in front of the cemetery to do observations.
That's great. So yeah, Tim Weaver is referring, for those of you who don't know, I don't know how many of you are well acquainted with the Von Braun Astronomical Society in your area. They are housed in Montesano State Park. And so if you connect with them, you can safely go view the night sky with them under a dark sky near the cemetery. So if you want to know more, I would encourage you to check in with Tim. I'm also going to post in the chat this light pollution map. I'm not sure if any of you have seen this before, but this map will actually show you, I'm going to pull up an image of it on my screen so that we can look at it together, where in Alabama there is a clear dark sky. So, well, we don't know that it was clear for sure. It depends on cloud coverage, but you can see I'm focusing in on Birmingham here because that's where I live. But there are some very bright red spots, which mean there's a lot of light pollution and near where the cities are. However, if we move towards the southern part of the state, you can see that there ends up being a lot more dark blue away from city lights. And so this map can be used if you want to find a good place in Alabama or in anywhere else you're visiting. You can use this map to help you track down a dark sky. Now I'm gonna share something that may be a little bit sad to you, living out here in the Southeast. And that is, if we zoom out of this map and we move ourselves toward the west, you can see actually that out in the Southwest, there are many, many very dark sky areas. And so people out in these areas are working hard to preserve those locations where it is dark and not let light pollution grow in those areas. And there's a new effort within Alabama that is trying to do the same for these dark spots that we have left. And so I'll share more about that at the end of the presentation. Thank you for sharing with me your experiences. So one thing we might want to ask is, what is the meaning of dark? The International Dark Sky Association, for which I'm a delegate, has tried to create a threshold of what dark means using an SQM measurement, a sky quality meter measurement that is around 20 to 21 on one of these meters. And I'm just gonna show you it's the amount of light that's coming into a particular area from the light of the night sky. So if we look really quickly at the scale here, if a full moon is out and if you're under street lights, the reading you'll get is around 17. But the darker you get, the more stars you can see. You're moving more towards 20 to 23. So they've decided that somewhere between 20 and 21 is where it's dark enough that you can say that you're in a light pollution free zone, or where light pollution isn't impacting your view of the stars very much.
Is that some logarithmic scale? It's just, I'm curious about the units there.
Yes. And I can provide more on the calculation later, but it does connect to the apparent magnitude scale that astronomers use when they study the stars and talk about the stars, how the distance of a star and its brightness and its temperature have an influence on our visibility of it. So it is how much light is coming into a specific area. Okay, so let's define what light pollution is. Light pollution is described as misdirected artificial light at night. Misdirected means that the light isn't just pointing down where it's useful, it's targeted for us to be able to see the ground and be aware of our surroundings. Misdirected light is when it's pointed outward or up. When light is pointed outward, it is actually shooting straight into our eyes and making it harder to see. I'll go into that a little bit more later. And when it's pointing up into space, like in this picture here. All this light that you're seeing in this picture is misdirected light. It's not useful to us here on Earth. And so it's wasted, and that's why it's called pollution. I want to share 3 terms with you that are really useful to think through when you're talking about light pollution with your friends and neighbors. The first term is skyglow. So skyglow is the accumulation of a bunch of lights at night that creates this sort of dome across the horizon. If you were out away, and maybe Tim can say more about this from the VBAS dark sky site. If you are away underneath dark skies, however there's a city somewhere nearby, you are going to see sky glow from that city. And so, Tim, can you tell us whether from that cemetery site that VBAS goes to, are you able to see sky glow from any nearby cities?
Yes, we can. There is a little bit of sky glow from Scottsboro.
Scottsboro, okay. Mhm.
It's like north, I believe, northwest of the dark sky site.
I see. Okay, so yeah, and that would mean that if you wanted to see a faint fuzzy object toward the northwest, you would have a hard time seeing it because
Yes,
of
we would have a hard time seeing it.
That's right. Okay, thank you. The second term is glare. Remember just a moment ago, I talked about how light pollution is like misdirected light that points out in addition to pointing up. Glare is the kind that comes straight out at you. So it may come from a car's headlights going straight into your eyes. It could come from the lights in your neighborhood that are unshielded, actually making it harder to see. They may do a little bit to light up the ground, but when you can actually see the light bulb, it's pointing into your eye and making it, causing glare. And on the bottom left here, I share this lovely light fixture that is extremely bright on my drive home at night. And I can hardly see that anyone is even coming up the road because of how bright it is. Later, I'll describe simple adjustments that can make these fixtures better, not just for our eyes and for preventing glare, but they're more helpful for the environment as well. Now, before the presentation started, I heard about light trespass, which is the third term, from Robin, who was on the call. And Robin was sharing about a nearby ballpark, which is sometimes leaves its lights on at night unnecessarily and is very visible from her home. What may be happening is the light from that ballpark is entering into her windows at night, as the lights shown in this picture are shining into these people's homes and disrupting their sleep. These people can't do anything about this light. It is owned probably by their homeowners association or whoever created this facility, and it is causing impact on their health. Seems a little unfair. All right, now you've heard that I'm an astronomy educator, so I just have to ask you, which of the three kinds of light pollution do you think are shown by the lights in this image? And I'll give you a hint, it might be more than one of them. Go ahead, Tim.
It's misdirected. So I think Robin said light trespass.
Yes, light trespass, it's misdirected light. Do you think if these lights are causing glare?
Oh yeah, glare. It's all three.
What about skyglow?
I imagine enough of it would cause skyglow. It depends on how much overall, I think.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, thank you. Robin says light trespass and glare. And if there were more lights in this neighborhood and you were far away, yeah, you would probably see a bit of a glow from these lights as well. Okay, so I wanted to share a little bit of analyses that I did before our meeting today on light pollution in your place in space, which is Huntsville. I wanted to look at Montesano Park. Oops, there we go. This is what I wanted to share with you. Montesano Park. If we drew a boundary around it, how has light pollution been changing here over the past 6 to 10 years? There's actually an online website that is connected to the website I just shared with you, the light pollution map.info, that is called Light Trends. And it enabled me to make a boundary around Montesano Park and plot over almost the past decade, how has the average lighting seen from space, seen from satellites, changed over each year? If we were to take the average number of light seen from that boundary I drew around Montesano Park, what would the numerical value be? we are plotting an exponential trend line here because we're looking for a percent increase. The percent increase is, as you can see down there, 3.9% per year over the past 10 years. So my question for you is, what do you think has caused this increase in light pollution in Montesano State Park? And as I asked that, I'm just going to go back and look at this image.
LEDs?
LEDs, can you say more about that?
Used to street lights use sodium lamps, so they would burn sodium so they would have a distinct spectrum. Later on, everyone started switching to the more light efficient, the more efficient LED lights because you get they're much brighter for the same amount of wattage as the sodium lamps, but those are full spectrum, which means you get the entire visible spectrum, which is really bad for astronomers, especially ones that are in astrophotography, because in the past you could use filters on your cameras to block out the sodium spectrum because it wasn't such a thin spectrum. But now it's all over. It's now across the entire spectrum, so you can't really block it out without losing everything anyway.
That's great. Thank you so much, Tim. I'm going to share a couple slides to help clarify.
I would think part of it would be just development around. I mean, Montesano itself hasn't been developed, but people are increasingly moving into this area. And another factor might be the use of LED headlights, which are a lot brighter, though I don't know, how that necessarily affects astronomy per se.
Well, good point. Let's look back at that graph. Do you notice that there's a decrease in the COVID-19 year? Probably from headlights, like you said, probably less people driving. That same phenomenon was seen in areas of Birmingham as well, this decrease in the COVID year. Good point. So I really want to refocus on the fact that it is probably not Montesano that is responsible for this increase of light pollution. Satellites pick up on not just lights like glare and trespass from individual lights, but also the sky glow. So even if Montesano had no lights in the park, the satellites are still going to pick up the sky glow readings from that area. So very important points. Anybody else want to say anything else on this? Okay, and I'm just, since Tim brought up some really interesting points, I'm just going to move forward in my presentation quite a bit, and then I'll go back. So he was sharing about how high pressure sodium lights used to have a very narrow spectrum, which is the amount of energy produced at various wavelengths of visible light. This is high pressure sodium streetlight spectrum. I was supposed to have I don't have it, sorry. The blue spectrum is more wide. So I don't know why that slide is now missing, but the spectrum for LEDs is broader here. And so there's more light put out at every wavelength of light. And it's actually the blue light that scatters more than the red light. And so the blue light goes higher up into the atmosphere and further out. And so it does cause a lot more light pollution when you're using blue colored LEDs, which look white to our eyes. Okay, I'm going to go back to where I was in the presentation. Okay, so this is an infographic showing how, at least a couple of decades ago, when this study that was done in 2001 was done, it was shown that light pollution is increasing across the globe at approximately 2% per year, which is an exponential growth rate. It's always 2% more of what it was the year before. And so you can just see, using those studies, in 2025, things look pretty bleak. And I will just say that this 2% is lower than what has been seen in Montesano Park. Remember, it was 3.89% there. Okay, I'm going to move forward a few slides because we've already talked about them. So we've talked about this and this. Since you folks are a space group, I wanted to share the perspective of astronaut John Grunsfeld, who spoke about light pollution at night seen from space. So I'm going to share this video with you. John Grunsfeld was interviewed with astronaut Braun at the last International Dark Sky Association conference about this very topic. What is it like to see light pollution at night from space? And what does it mean to these astronauts to be able to see that? So I'm just gonna play this video for about 1.5 minutes so you can hear John's response. I think I need to reshare.
Well, the other side is that, we do fly through the Earth's shadow. And relevant to today's discussion, I was absolutely amazed at the amount of electricity we spend to light our world at night that we beam out into space. And on one of my flights, I thought, if an alien spacecraft could cross the great distance between the stars and was coming into our solar system, they would have a telescope, or on their flight deck, they'd have a view screen. And they would say, hey, magnify that second planet. And they'd look at Venus, and it would look like a little crescent. And they go, oh, that's interesting. They might have already looked at Saturn and said, oh, another planet with rings, how boring. We have 4 in our solar system. And then they'd get to Earth and, they'd see a crescent and they'd say, oh, wow, these guys are really stupid. We know there's life there, but look at all the energy they're beaming to space. There must be no intelligent life on that planet. And they'd probably come and visit and, they might have a good time. But it really, all kidding aside, it really is stark how much you see of the Earth on the night side, just because of all the lights. And there's lots of interesting things you can see, but it basically looks like a Rand McNally map, for the US, just to see the incredible amount of light.
Yeah, and that's the point I always make people too think light pollution. Who cares if you can't see the stars? They don't know because they've never seen the stars.
Okay, I'm going to stop it right there. We'll revisit that clip a little bit later. So I worry about that too. Are we the last generation to see the night sky? I worry about that for my students who may never have seen very many stars in the sky. They may never have seen the Milky Way. So maybe is astronomy ever going to be seen as a viable discipline to them going into the future? So we've described what light pollution is and how it's experienced from space and how it's affecting Huntsville. I want to share now negative effects of light pollution on various environmental phenomena, including human health, non-human animal health, and we've talked about visibility of the night sky, but also on our pockets, energy waste. So human health. Humans need darkness at night to produce melatonin. When it gets dark, it signals to our body that we need melatonin, and melatonin helps us regulate our sleep cycle. This is a study that was done by the American Medical Association that reviewed many, many articles about the good of melatonin in the body at night. It regulates a circadian rhythm. The American Medical Association has 3 recommendations for lighting. And I want to draw your attention to the 3rd point here. They've encouraged the use of 3000 K lighting or lower at night, and LED lighting that is properly shielded. If you have no idea what 3000K lighting is or shielded lighting is, later I will get to that. But it is really interesting to hear that even the American Medical Association, the people who help tell us what's good for our bodies, is saying that dark skies are important in a tangential way. Light pollution effects on plants and animal health. We're going to go through several different kinds of plants and animals. So firstly, I just think this is phenomenal. Like, trees also produce melatonin, just like humans and other animals. And so they also can't go through their regular rhythms if there's lighting nearby. And so you won't see this phenomenon so drastically on every tree that's on your property that is shown in these photos, but it is very likely that the trees that are experiencing light trespass and glare on your property or your nearby property are also being affected by the light near them. So in this case, we have a light that is tricking this tree into thinking that it's still spring or summer, and so the leaves stayed on, and the rest of the tree knew that it was getting dark and longer evenings, so it lost all of its leaves. Pretty striking right there. Similarly, down here, we have part of the tree budding and part of it not, because the tree is fooled into thinking that it's on a different part of the season from this light that's nearby. Turtles. I wonder how many of you have been to the Gulf Shore area or Dauphin Island area of Alabama. I have heard from talking with many people that going to the beach in the summer is a common vacation among Alabamians. And in fact, I married into a family that also goes to the beach every summer. So I feel like I'm more Alabamian by doing this. And I was so excited this one year when I learned that there was going to be turtles hatching on our property that we were renting. And so I actually witnessed, this is my photo of sea turtles moving towards the sea because humans were showing them the way. The important part here is that humans actually needed to intervene to help these turtles get to the ocean. And they were using red light because red light won't affect turtles. So why did humans need to intervene at all? Okay, yeah, and thanks for sharing, Tim, that you also went to the beach regularly. So turtles are used to looking at the reflection of the night sky on the water to tell them where to go, how to migrate in the waters, how to breed. They're used to looking at this line, this reflection of light on the water. And when we put our artificial lights up around the beach, they get distracted. I feel like this image is such a striking and impactful way of thinking about what goes through a turtle's head. Again, this is why we need to help turtles get to the ocean now, because they are distracted by our lights otherwise. Thank you to those volunteers in the Sea Turtle Conservancy who do this work. Fireflies. These are pictures I took in Pennsylvania, and I understand that Alabama used to have a lot of fireflies, and in some neighborhoods where it's very dark, there are still fireflies visible. Fireflies need to be able to see each other to mate. And so if there is lighting around, they can't see each other and they won't mate. Case in point. This is a video. If you haven't seen a firefly before, hopefully you can see fireflies are flashing. And that is my spouse who just caught one. Didn't kill the firefly, but it's a common pastime to catch fireflies and hold them in your hand. Birds are another species all migratory birds, which are most birds, are attracted to light at night. They're used to using the night sky to navigate. And when they see lights from buildings, they get distracted and stop migrating. They get confused, they hit windows. I've had birds hit my windows here in Birmingham. And so we've started to darken all of our windows at night. And there's things that you can put on your windows during the day to help birds not get distracted by the reflective light from your window. But I just want to point out that this is a huge issue. Do you see all these birds in this photo? This is a collection of birds that hit a window on a specific day and in a city, and were gathered all together just to show the massacre that they experienced. I know that it happens in Birmingham. I've talked to people who've picked up these dead birds. The Audubon Society and the International Dark Skies Association have partnered together to try and provide as many educational programs as possible, and to even create lights out programs for cities, such that when it's a migratory season for birds, a city could adopt a lighting ordinance to say, hey, during these months, we need to shut off our lights at night. So again, the lights out program. I'm going to go ahead and post some resources for protecting birds into the chat. Okay. Now let's talk about energy waste. Satellite data is pretty awesome. Satellite data helps us calculate how much energy is pointing up into space on an annual basis. And it's estimated that humans spend somewhere between $3 and $7 billion every year on unnecessary lighting at night. As some of you may know, lighting requires energy expenditures, and our energy comes from fossil fuels for the most part. When fossil fuels are burned, they release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, which induces a greenhouse effect on Earth and heats our planet more than if that CO2 carbon dioxide were not present. And so not only are we wasting energy by putting out into space, we're doing the second thing too, of putting a lot more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And Robin, I think you mentioned something about this concept earlier. Is there anything you want to say about this right now? Okay, I'll go ahead and do that.
Are you talking? You said I said something earlier, and I'm looking at what you told me. We've just discussed the birds, and we're talking about the light going out to the. I put something in chat maybe that I had attended a meeting where astronauts spoke of during COVID that the number of lights during COVID, they saw how things changed and they had detected lighting changes due to COVID, you know, and they can, I think, and things like that.
Okay, cool. I thought you had mentioned something about carbon dioxide emission, and anyway, I might have just said you had said before, so just checking.
No, I didn't go down that venue, but really I'm learning a lot, and my dad really is very good to birds in his area, so I'm going to let him know about being sure to turn off the lights as good as he can at night. He'll do that.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
That's all right.
Okay, so one thing I want to tangentially move on to for a moment is, isn't lighting at night safer? Don't we light our cities at night because it makes it safer? Like, we can see one another, we can be more aware of our surroundings. Not only that, if you look at this top left photo, this neighborhood looks really warm and welcoming and neighborly. Am I asking you, is the International Dark Sky Association asking you to get rid of all of your lights? Well, let me help you understand what is being argued for. When you have a light at night that is unshielded and releasing light in every direction. Can you see very well this person standing over here? I bet you didn't even notice them at first. So something about this light is making it harder to see this person. It may be better than if there were no light, but what if this? What if we shielded this light? Then we are able to see the person much more easily. So the top left picture is the one I had on the previous screen, and the bottom left-hand picture shows that when you shield that light, you're actually able to see more of your surroundings. And so it's actually a myth that more lighting is safer. In reality, well-designed lighting is safer. So how are we going to make a difference? It's going to happen through community addressing of the issue. And so let's take some inspiration from John Grunsfeld again. I'm going to share a little clip from him just for about a minute.
You know, we live on a real planet, and when you're in orbit, looking down as you orbit the Earth, and in low Earth orbit once about every 95 minutes or so, you see the continents, you see the oceans, and what really surprised me the most the first time I got to space was not that the Earth looked pristine and that you can't see a lot of evidence of people. It's that everywhere I looked, you could see evidence of people. And while you do see international borders, you see lights that are different colors in one country than another. You see, all kinds of differences in prosperity, agriculture, and such. But nevertheless, you can't ignore the fact when you're orbiting the Earth once every 92 to 95 minutes, that everything we do on Earth, every people's light pollution or air pollution or what we do in the ocean, that it's all connected. There's no escaping. And Ron said it, we are on spaceship Earth, and whatever one person does on spaceship Earth or one, country really does affect everyone. And so it's only collective action that we're going to solve problems, whether it be a dark sky or a warm planet.
So doing something good in one area potentially make something worse in another area nearby. Just you can't do them separately.
Okay, so that was John Grunsfeld saying that we can work together to make change, and that improving something in one category may actually help improve a whole ecosystem, which I hope that you also took away from the looking at how light pollution affects plant, animal, and human health. It affects us all. So how do we address light pollution? I'm going to share a few takeaways, starting with the fixture style, color, and level, and then we'll look at some more communal activities that we can do. So let's talk about fixture style first. When we look at different kinds of light fixtures and how they contribute to light pollution, we can think about very bad light fixtures to the best kind of light fixtures. And it can be a little bit challenging to understand what is the difference between these fixtures. I mean, all of these look like they have a little hood on them. So does anyone have any ideas about what's the difference between the better light fixture and the best? Like, what is actually happening within the fixture to make the best better than the better? Any ideas?
The best is aiming the light where you need it, which is where you're walking.
Yeah. Does someone want to add something?
Well, as I say, for the best one, all the light is directed at the ground. As opposed to the better one where it's not going out in the sky, but it's still kind of parallel to the ground. A lot of the light is missing the ground. Some of the light is missing the ground.
Yep. So this one is definitely going to cause glare. The bulb that's in here is shining light directly into your eyes. Like you both said very nicely, this light is pointing like down at the ground directly where it's needed. The difference between these two and what's happening is that the bulb is all the way inside the best fixture. There's no part of the bulb in the best fixture that is extending below the shield. So let's talk about shielding. Here's an example of the kind of bulb that we saw on the last screen. We have a little bit of a hood, but the bulb is extending below the fixture. And if you look at these light lines carefully, you'll notice that because the bulb is down here, the light is not just moving down to the ground, it's actually traveling out and up into space. An example of how that looks if you were on the ground is something like this. So these lights are causing, on the bottom left, apparently are causing a lot of glare. On the top right, we have a fixture in which the bulb is fully inside of that fixture. And so the light has nowhere else to go but down. And you can see the improved lighting conditions on the bottom right. It's actually easier to see the surroundings. There's no glare being produced in the bottom right.
That happened to me by when I had a house fixture near my front door that kept breaking, not the bulb, the fixture, even though the exact same fixture near the garage, which is exposed to the elements, has been fine for 30 years. So when I finally had a chance to get some house maintenance done, I had them take that out. Plus, it was drawing bugs right to the door, which is like the stupidest place you'd put a light. Yeah. And I instead, and it was never good enough. So I had them put 3 lights in the porch ceiling, which has a lip. And that light only shines down because there's that lip. Yep. Just a little bit goes out to the yard, but it looks better from a distance, and you don't have any of that light pollution, at least coming from the porch.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. So I wonder, I'm going to share this image in the chat, and also a link to a website from the International Dark Sky Association that actually has dark sky approved fixtures that you can buy. So tomorrow, after this presentation, if you wanted to purchase a dark sky friendly light, you could buy it from that second link that I'm sharing in the chat. So the International Dark Sky Association has a relative list of unacceptable versus acceptable fixtures. The difference that you'll notice is that in the unacceptable, for example, this one here, that bulb is extending below the shield. Whereas on the right-hand side, we have the bulbs fully enclosed within the shield. Okay, I know we only have a few minutes left, so I'm just going to breeze through these last points. Remember when the American Medical Association described that you needed 3000 K or lower lighting for outdoor installations? What does that mean? So that number that's being listed is a temperature rating. And if you go to the store, most bulbs will have a temperature rating on it. You probably never even noticed it or were aware that that was a thing that was on the bulb you were purchasing. But the hotter bulbs that are more Kelvin are typically bluer, and they are called something like daylight. 3000 K, you can see, is more towards the red end of the spectrum, and they're usually called soft white or warm white colors of lighting. So the American Medical Association is suggesting to get your nighttime bulbs in this color in order to not to affect your health. And those are good temperatures for animals too. Remember, the sea turtles were not affected by the red light. And so I just found this infographic because it very clearly delineates warm white lights from more of the blue or daylight colored lighting. And you would typically buy a daylight bulb for the daytime. It's good for your circadian rhythm to experience these colors during the day because it helps you stay awake, but not at night. So the IDA has 5 guiding principles for home lighting considerations. I'm going to just put that in the chat. It comes in other languages as well. So maybe you have a place like at your work, or you could post this, or with your homeowners association. I'll just share that recent studies have shown that, as something Tim spoke of earlier, was that the LEDs that are being put in, they're not only bluer, which is bad for light pollution, but they're also very bright. And it turns out that if you have a typical LED, humans cannot discern their awareness any better under 100% light level versus 25% light level. They're still able to detect things in their surrounding at particular distances, no matter the light level, down to 25%. So what that means is that if cities and communities are using their light bulbs to the full max of their capability, they're probably wasting a lot of energy. They could actually reduce their expenditure by 75% and dim their lights to 25% of their lighting level. And I'm just gonna put that in the chat real quick. Tim, is it okay to go just a few minutes over?
I don't have a problem with it.
Okay, well, anyone can leave if they need to. So I've already shared in the chat where to find the lighting. It's the IDA Fixture Seal of Approval program. And the IDA is not selling these bulbs themselves. They're referring you to, for example, Home Depot or Lowe's, who carry the fixtures. One thing that could be done in your community is to adopt a lighting ordinance that says that only fully shielded light fixtures should be used and under a temperature of 3000 K at night. The International Dark Sky Association actually has example lighting ordinances that you can ask your community to adopt. You can conduct a survey in your community or in your neighborhood to see what people think about their lighting and learn some cool things. Maybe they think that there's too much lighting and it should be darker because we want more fireflies or something. So you might learn some surprising things by interviewing people and creating a database. And I'm happy to share this survey with you that many people who are addressing light pollution use to study lighting and their lighting opinions in their community. There's also dark sky places. So around the world, there are several parks, especially you can see towards the west and the northeast of the US, that are designated dark sky parks. Remember when I said that what is dark? It is a sky quality meter rating of 20 to 21-ish or higher. Well, these are places that community members like you and I have worked together to designate as dark sky places that use good lighting practices and are set on keeping the area dark. And you can see there's a little hole in Alabama. So I think we have some work to do here. And it'd be great if we could create a dark sky park or place here. And so my final slides are about sharing that the International Dark Sky Association is geared towards protecting the night from light pollution and promoting responsible outdoor lighting. And you can join. It's $35 for an adult to join, or $15 if you're a student. They give you tons of resources and monthly updates on lighting initiatives going around the world that you can attend. It feels like a really great community to be a part of. And then I'd like to invite you to join a proposed IDA chapter that I am helping organize and lead, called Starry Skies South. We just voted on our name last week. So this is an Alabama-based International Dark Sky Association chapter. Right now, there's about 20 members. We'd love to have you as well. You'd be such a great asset for that group. We, instead of saying Starry Skies, Alabama, we chose to open our doors to others in the South that don't have a chapter near where they are. So we're trying to be a little bit inclusive with our naming. So if you want to become part of that chapter, all you need to do is email me. I've got a really easy email address, michellewooten@uav.edu. And with that, my presentation is finished. I can help answer any questions or take any comments from you at this time. And thank you for allowing me to go a little bit over.
No problem.
Do you know Richard Norman? Is he one of your members? Of the,
I have not heard that name. How do you know his name?
he's a VBAS, at least at one time Bill was a VBAS officer, and I could have sworn he was part of some Dark Skies Association. Are there multiple different groups?
Not in this area that I know of. There's a strong representation from VBAS in our proposed chapter right now. So I'll have to ask the VBAS members more about that person. Thank you for the tip.
So what type of astronomy do you do?
Oh, in the past, I've done research on galaxy clusters, and right now I do more science education research. So I'm actually, I have astronomy training, but my focus is on teaching astronomy and also improving science education in general. So I'm more focused on the education side of things.
Have you ever considered going to like one of the observatories like those in Arizona, or maybe one day taking a trip to Chile's new upcoming observatory with some students?
That's a great question. I have invited students to the University of Montebello's observatory because that's the one that's closest to us. And I am applying for a trip to Chile to learn about the science that's done there. This program that I'm applying to is specifically to bring this astronomy that's done there to the general public and help, for example, students to participate in it. So I would go to that, but I haven't seen a student opportunity there yet. But I would definitely keep my eyes open for that.
Yeah, I want to add something as well. For VBAS, we were looking for different sites to besides Kinema, because Kinema is barely a dark sky. It's like Portal 4, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Bankhead, which is a state park, a little bit farther from Huntsville. I mean, it's about a little bit farther from Huntsville than Kenmore is, albeit in a different direction. But the sky is Portal 3. It is darker, but there's a lot of trees, and I think that's one of the other issues with having a dark sky site in Alabama, because all the places that's dark are heavily forested as well. So now you're going to have to cut down a bunch of trees until at least the tall ones, until you get enough of a clearance that you can actually see the sky with, at least for astronomers anyway.
Yeah, there might be one cleared area that would help our cause. I think that there's a person, Mel Blake, out of University of Northern Alabama, who is looking into that prospect at that park. So thank you. Any other questions or comments?
There are people in Huntsville that are interested in protecting. I really learned a lot from this. I truly, it's given me some new perspectives. You know, And I'm just most appreciative of what you have educated us in tonight. But as far as the natural surroundings and keeping things healthy on Earth, how it can have a positive effect, I think that your work could really affect a lot of local areas, such as the land trust and the there's some people over that, and then botanical garden. They look at things if it's affecting nature and trees. I attended a class that, one of the guys said, hey, just don't, do these things, a lot of environmental things. So I think that the person who used to be over it, I don't know who's over it now, but it may be the same person, is very interested in the natural environment.
That's great.
For obvious reasons. So you're saying that it's affecting trees and everything, and things like that. So I think that those would be great people to connect to with your society.
That's good. I will bring that up. Yeah, that's actually a point that some others want to broach, is partnering with other organizations with similar causes. And yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I would like to maybe go through email through Tim after the meeting and get in contact you post meeting, and do something over the next couple of weeks to get something ready for a report.
I would love to talk more with you, Robin. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then I'm just looking back through the chat. There was one comment I missed from John about growing up in central rural Nebraska. That sounds amazing. Okay. Well,
yeah, it was neat. I grew up on a farm, and we irrigated corn crops, and frequently the night rotation of our irrigation methodology had us out well after sunset. So we got to see the night sky a lot.
wow.
And when you're a kid out there, you kind of you take it for granted until you move to the big city and find out you can't see the stars half the time in the big city. But I had work assignments that also took me on trips out to China Lake, California. So I had the opportunity to see the night sky in the high desert out there, which was spectacular as well.
Oh, wow. I'm glad you had those experiences. I feel I'm so lucky to have been in amateur astronomer clubs in order to feel safe with others in the night. And that's something that I really want to work on in my teaching, is giving students more of those opportunities. The last thing that I know the VBAS group discussed was organizing more night walks. Like, they already do a lot of astronomer stuff, but they would like to maybe organize night walks in the park, because there's a lot of cool wildlife you can see and hear at night that you can't during the day. For example, I just did a program at Chiaja State Park focused on dark skies, and the park interpretivist Mandy Pearson led a night walk, and we actually saw blue fireflies, ghost fireflies, and I've never seen that in my life. And so maybe more of these experiences where you get people connecting to nature at night would also compel them to be more protective of it.
Yeah, once again, when I was a child in the rural Nebraska area, we saw fireflies all the time, every summer. It was a normal part of our life experience. When I first moved to Alabama, the house, the area, subdivision I live in, we had fireflies at night too, not numerous like they were in Nebraska 30 years ago, but they have seemed to decrease in number in the 10 years I've lived here.
Yeah.
There's plenty in my yard if you want them.
Does that mean you don't like them, Ronnie, or you're just wanting to share the love?
Yeah, just share the love.
Cool.
One thing I did want to add is I have a background of understanding a little bit about radiation from a healthcare perspective, working many years and aiming the beams. But you know, I noticed that how the light focuses, how the nicer lights that directs the light to where it could be more beneficial for people. You know, you don't get that the light just deteriorating and diminishing as it goes out all around. You know, around the light. You know, the intensity decreases. You know, in square area. You know, for doubling the distance. You know, but how the light, it's not collimated, but it shields it to direct the light so that it's divergent and focused to a specific area. So it directs the light to maybe be more beneficial to somebody and cuts out the glare.
That's right. Nicely said. Yeah. Yeah, and I know that's an engineering problem because, like, if you're lighting a sidewalk in a city and you want to have shielded fixtures, it's like, well, then how often do you need a fixture so that the whole ground is covered, you know? So sometimes there are some arguments to be made about allowing a little bit of that outer lighting to protrude from the fixture so that you don't have to have as many fixtures, because it's like a lesser of two evils. Do you want to have more fixtures that are all targeted at the ground, or do you want to have fewer that have a little bit more spread? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Cool. It was really fun to talk to you all.
I have a question.
Yes.
Have you talked with any municipalities about the I guess the more reddish LED lights that I've seen on I guess the previous talk you had?
Yeah. So we have, this group is so new. We've only had 2 meetings so far. But even within that time, one thing that I love about working with amateur astronomers is that they are very well connected. Like, they've lived their careers in many different parts of society. And so some are very well connected to local government. And one was able in the Birmingham area to talk to a politician about dark sky advocacy. I went with them, and I also talked about the redder lighting is better. And she was going to share it with her other politician colleagues. So who knows where that goes? You know, I guess you got to start somewhere. But I have heard that Huntsville in the past, the VBAS group has had some sway on one politician, but that politician is no longer in office. So I would say that we're trying to start that conversation, but we have a lot of movement to make. Alrighty, well, I welcome you to email me with any other follow-up questions or comments. If you know how to get in touch with a politician, we would all be grateful to know. But otherwise, please feel welcome to join the group. Again, we would definitely consider you an asset, especially considering your love of space. And I'll just say, I never did talk about the light pollution from satellites, which would be an angle that would be definitely worthwhile to approach in that group, but has not been approached yet. So again, you're welcome to join us.
Is that it?
Yeah, that's it for me.
All right.